In November of 2003, my wife had been abusing me on a daily basis since returning to Maine in September. The abuse was so severe that I was terminated from my job at Olympia Sports, which I had for over 1 year as manager trainee. I immediately obtained another job at a nearby sporting goods store called Decathlon that was in the process of liquidation. However, the abuse continued to escalate. On Saturday, November 29th, I was home caring for my 2-year-old son, while my wife, as usual, was out drinking at the bar. Later that night, my wife returned to the apartment and burst through the door in a drunken rage with a random woman that she had met at the bar and proceeded to brutally batter me while I shielded my son with my body. I was punched, strangled, bitten, and had my eyes nearly gouged out of my face. My property was also destroyed. During the vicious attack, the woman Corey had brought home from the bar ran into the apartment and grabbed my son and fled before calling 911. She reported to the dispatcher that she had met a woman at the bar drinking named Corey, and that Corey was now beating her husband so severely that she was afraid for the safety of the baby. When the Portland police responded to the scene, my wife attacked one of the officers. Corey was arrested and charged with devious assault. In the police report, my injuries were documented. I was struck over 20 times. I had injuries that covered 60% of my body in various areas. The domestic violence report noted several scratches on my neck. Even though the photos show clear strangulation marks and bruising, this would become part of a continuing pattern of minimization and or mischaracterization of injuries that appears systemic and spans decades now. The domestic violence report also went on to note the presence of my 2-year-old toddler, Justin Jr., indicated DHS referral. The following day, on November 30th, Corey was charged with a Class D assault in Portland. I received a letter on December 8th, 2003 from the District Attorney's Office. Dear Justin, I am a victim witness assistant in the District Attorney's Office. Part of what I do here is help you understand how the criminal process works. While we value your input, the state will be determining whether to press charges, not you. Sincerely, Catherine Stock. 1 week later, on December 17th, 2003, Corey was charged with violating conditions of release when she broke the no-contact bail conditions and assaulted me again in Casco. I was again falsely arrested by the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office for the second time. Despite the serious nature of Corey's arrest, the Sheriff's Office released my wife before releasing me, and she retrieved our son and disappeared. After I was released the following day, I immediately returned to my new full-time job at Sugarloaf, teaching children snowboarding in the Mountain Adventure program. 5 days later, on December 22nd, my lawyer filed a discrimination complaint on my behalf with the Maine Human Rights Commission against Olympia Sports. On the same day, Corey somehow obtained a protection from abuse order in Portland District Court, awarding her full custody of our son and relocating our son from Franklin County to Cumberland County. In her sworn statement to the court, Corey admitted that she had assaulted me and that she had previously kidnapped our baby and taken him out of the country and kept him from me for over 1 year. Corey boldly admits, plaintiff arrested for assault in violation of bail conditions. My mother flew in from the UK. Justin Thomas II and I left and stayed away for 1 year. This was a remarkable reinvention of events that reframed Corey's international parental child abduction that was financed by her mother and facilitated by the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office into some sort of rescue operation. Corey did not mention that she had absconded to the United Kingdom to reunite with her old boyfriend, Ashley, who she had called her first love, an older man from Cambridge that her mother Annette had hooked her up with in the early 1990s. Corey went on to state in her sworn statement, 3 weeks ago, Justin locked me out of our residence after a small fight. I left. I had a couple of drinks and returned. Justin opened the door. He said I could not take the baby. At that time, I began to assault him. We are staying in the battered women's shelter. Despite these admissions, and despite being on bail for battering me, and despite being charged with violating her bail conditions just 5 days earlier, the court granted her an order of protection and full custody of our 2-year-old child. The court also ordered that I have supervised visits with my own child. This despite my own documented professional occupation, which placed young children in my care and supervision in challenging and dynamic environments. Corey was never prosecuted for any of the crimes that she admitted to committing in her sworn statement. Upon Corey's return with her 2-year-old son to Maine in September 2003, heavily addicted to crystal methamphetamine and weighing just 92 pounds, CPS opened a child welfare investigation. The November 29, 2003 brutal Market Street attack not only happened during an open CPS case, but was later totally ignored by the CPS worker. Instead, CPS focused on my alleged pot smoking, as noted in April 24, 2004 CPS closing letter. Dear Justin, I am writing to advise you the department is closing your case. You have expressed that you are not happy with this decision. I understand your concerns. As I told you, the department is not able to keep a case open without proof that a child is at risk of harm. What you have stated about Corey is concerning, but as I told you, the professionals working with Corey have reported that she's doing a good job. Corey's been living in a location where there's been some supervision. The reports are all positive. Some of the concerns you raise are around drug use. You admitted to me that you smoke pot and also stated that you are not willing to change your behavior. It is difficult to take your concerns about Corey's drug and alcohol use seriously when you do not find your own to be a problem. I understand that you have an attorney and will pursue custody of JT through that means. This is the appropriate avenue if you feel you are the better parent for JT. I know you are frustrated with this decision, and I also continue to have concerns based on Corey's history, but I do not have any proof that would support those concerns at this time. If new information becomes available, you should call DHS intake number at 1-800-452-1999. I wish you well. Sincerely, Robin Graffam. In the April 24th CPS closing letter, there was no mention of the November 2003 Market Street attack and DV assault where I was brutally beaten and strangled while home caring for my 2-year-old son while Corey went out drinking on Saturday night. Also absent from the letter was any mention of Corey's violation of bail condition and assault on December 17, 2003, where again my son was present. There was also no mention that Corey was on bail and awaiting trial for domestic assault. There was no mention that Corey had resorted to attacking a Portland police officer in November. There was no mention that the child had witnessed these assaults on his father and the police. There was no mention that the child had to be rescued from his mother's brutal attack by a woman that Corey herself had just met and brought home from the bar. There was no mention that this was my second job loss caused directly by Corey's violence. I had lost my previous position after she had me falsely arrested, stole my truck, and then kidnapped our son in July 2002. Corey's daily assaults resulted in me losing my job again in October 2003 when I was terminated from Olympia Sports. There was no mention that Corey had overdosed on crystal meth and had been committed to a psychiatric hospital after a drug overdose in September 2003, just 2 months before the Market Street attack. There was also no mention that Corey had returned to Maine in September 2003 with my son after committing an international parental child abduction where she and her mother had kidnapped my son in July 2002 and fled the state and then country to an undisclosed location somewhere in Scotland, where she reunited with her boyfriend, Ashley. There was no mention that my son's whereabouts and well-being were totally unknown to me for over 1 year until Corey's return and the reunification with my then 2-year-old child. Incredibly, there was no mention that Corey would be or could be facing felony charges, including federal charges for international parental child abduction. These were only some of the apparent omissions from the record and would be the beginning of a pattern that often included repeated injuries to my son that were documented as accidents by most of the Portland area professionals, if they were documented at all. The local institutional response to the female perpetrated domestic abuse and subsequent male victimization that often rewrote history would set the stage for repeated patterns of re-victimization and a 10-year contentious divorce and custody dispute that resulted in a perpetual cycle of violence, discrimination, and systemic abuse that devastated my life, destroyed my career trajectory, while isolating both my son and myself from support systems and favorable environments, confining us to the Portland and Cumberland County jurisdiction. This cycle of violence and abuse left my son vulnerable to continuous victimization and marginalization in the community. Corey would flee the state in late 2016. However, the damage was done. The decades of abuse and isolation have led to health collapses for both my son and myself. I came down with a rare, painful chronic knee condition. My lifelong chronic migraine headache condition has essentially been weaponized against me. My son came down with seizures and was diagnosed with epilepsy. Our lives have been devastated by living in what feels like an American gulag system. All attempts to file criminal complaints yield at best no prosecution, and at times procedural abuse, obstruction, tampering with evidence, destruction of evidence, intimidation, harassment. Attempts to push back on the institutions lead to stonewalling, abuse, attacks on credibility or character. He's controlling, he's obsessive, he's delusional, he's attacking us. The pattern resembles a sort of institutional Darvo. The appearance of potential institutional coordination cannot be easily dismissed. It's almost as if, for over 20 years, they have protected the kidnappers so that they could protect themselves.